Whew. You shake your head. Where are you? Oh, right. Just about to finish up the prototype. You fiddle with the display. The device is so intricate that you had to buy another screwdriver, specialized, just to twist the screws. Just another one for the collection, you think, as you tighten the final seam. The completed headset sits in front of you on the desk. Its diagnostics flashing on your monitor. Something feels very familiar about all of this. Maybe it's because you've been through this before with previous versions of the project. Who knows? You've certainly been at it long enough. The home lab is good enough for what you need. It doesn't compare to the university's facility, but after the mishap with the Neurolab's test rats, you aren't allowed back inside the building unless you want to deal with the police. Of course, you can still operate just fine in your garage, but it isn't ideal. Fortunately, your old lab partner took your side, so you aren't completely cut off. The frames snap into place and you inspect your work. At first glance, the device looks like a pair of glasses from a high school film project. Square frames with various wires and bits of metal poking out. 2 external power supplies which clip to your belt. Velcro straps extend from the temples like tentacles. It's not pretty, but appearances are something for the marketing team to worry about before it goes to mass production. You set the screwdriver down and pick up the headset. It's a little heavy, which makes sense considering the odds and ends bolted onto its framework. Your last prototype had enough wires poking out of it that it was like wearing a visor made of steel wool. The scabs it left are still behind your ears. This iteration is far more self-contained. Cable management was a skill you taught yourself when you built your first PC, and it seemed like it would come in handy to make sure the glasses weren't too messy. A few community college classes on introductory electrical engineering taught you how to hook up the circuits as needed. You turn the glasses over in your hand, and you aren't really sure what you expected. It doesn't snap onto your face. It doesn't come alive and drill a wire into your brain. It just sits there. You admonish yourself for being silly and boot up the program on your terminal. One downside to getting ejected from a university lab is a lack of sterile test environment, but your apartment should do good enough for what this headset is designed to do. You take a second to consider what you're doing and then lower it over your face. The headset rests heavy on the bridge of your nose and the metal is cool against your cheeks. You fasten the Velcro behind your head. It's still a little front heavy, but after tightening the straps it settles more comfortably. The electrode's rubber is cool against your temple. You clip the power supply units to your belt and you take a deep breath before you flip the switch. In the right lighting, the batteries resemble larger than average fanny packs. Not exactly a fashion statement, but they fit with the retro futuristic appearance of the headset itself. The glasses thrum against your face as diagnostics scroll down the screen on your terminal. Things seem steady, though the cooling fan on the power supply whirs into overdrive. The hardware supplier promised they wouldn't explode if overloaded, and you took her word that you weren't strapping grenades to your hip. Though small, the amount of power needed to operate these glasses was prodigious. It was something to streamline in the future model, but right now it was simply enough to make sure the things worked at all. Engaging neuromechanical interface, reads the bottom line of the diagnostic scroll. The electrodes on your temple heats up as your vision fuzzes slightly and the dizziness washes over your mind. But then the moment passes. Your sight sharpens again and the display flashes a green check mark in the bottom right corner. Okay, initial startup works, you think. Time to actually test its functionality. For as long as you can remember, you've always had trouble deciding which course of action was the most important at any given time. It first manifested when you were a child, a scrawny little thing, perpetually underweight compared to the other kids your age. Incredibly bright, as every adult teacher put it, after even a moment. Observing you at work, but unable or unwilling to prioritize what you needed most. What initially seemed like a lack of appetite was soon identified as an unwillingness to admit you needed to do something else besides work on whatever project you set your mind to. In human development terms, the ability to plan, focus, and execute multiple tasks is referred to as executive function. It's what allows people to prioritize tasks without distraction or impulse derailing their progress. And it's what lets people interrupt their ongoing projects if they realize they need something else. You never lacked executive function per se, but it was never something which came naturally to you. When you set your mind on a goal, you pursued that goal to its completion at the expense of everything else. For a while, You were proud of this single-minded devotion to your plans, despite the hungry nights spent in the lab, or the lonely nights spent in the lab, or the rushed bathroom runs when you realized you spent the entire day in the lab with no breaks. Your output was extraordinary, and certainly well worth the effort. When Charlie left, though, it definitely highlighted some shortcomings with your methods. It was the first time your inability to recognize what you truly needed to prioritize caused any trouble, and so you decided to get to work on it. APP.eal was the name of a project, APP.eal, an artifact from a previous iteration which would highlight environmental objects you desired. Of course, your science wasn't exactly enough to filter through the blunt urging of the id, and the concept was shelved after some uncomfortable initial testing. This was a third iteration of APP.eal, one which utilized a far more nuanced program to filter through the white noise of the human brain, identify what the body or mind needed, and highlight the shortest path through the local environment to fulfill that need. A robust artificial intelligence parsed the visual inputs from the camera and displayed the path on the lenses. Simply put, the glasses tell you what you need and where to get it. The only indication the glasses are on is a small flashing exclamation point in the bottom right-hand corner of your field of vision. You focus your thoughts on the alert and the message, "Calibration needed," flashes up on the display. Would you like to calibrate APP.eal? You sharpen your thoughts on the word yes, and the menu disappears. A loading bar fills from left to right and then disappears also. The display goes dead. The power supply fans at your belt go silent. You sit for a moment, taken by surprise. This should have worked. What went wrong? You go to remove the glasses when suddenly the power fans start up again, and green wireframe outlines the surface in your garage lab, identifying, the heads-up display says. And the green wireframe fades to leave an arrow on the ground. Wait, you think. It's clearly directing you towards something you need, or something you want, but it hasn't identified what that thing is. An obvious shortcoming in hindsight, you think, but something to be addressed after this test? You stand from your chair curious, and the arrow in the ground pointed to the alleyway between your place and the neighbor's. You disconnect the headset from your desktop terminal and the display fizzles briefly as it swaps to local processors. The power indicator says you have a good 4 hours before it needs to get plugged in. Perfect for a field test. Your lab door leads to the pathway which connects your garage side door to your driveway. Your 2014 blue Subaru Impreza is parked there, and the arrow leads you up to its driver's side door. Where is it taking me? You think as you get into the vehicle and key the ignition. The lens displays shift from an arrow to a GPS screen of the local area, and the directions of the map are a familiar route you normally take when you go on your hikes. Maybe APP.eal was telling you needed to get out and have some fresh air. The weather recently was not very hospitable to outdoor activities, and though you've enjoyed your time in the lab, it was important to get out and about in nature sometimes. You reverse out of the driveway and follow the directions on the glasses lenses. I guess we're going on a field test, you say to no one in particular. A normal occurrence for you, now that you live alone. You consider the glasses, and a shiver goes down your spine. You hadn't expected the onboard artificial intelligence to have such a fidelity as to schedule its own field test. It's obvious now that's what you sought out to do, but to have the program sharpen to its focus so quickly catches the breath in your chest. You do your best not to drive distractedly, but the magnitude of the potential applications for a technology like this. If this tech has truly parsed out your desire for a test run and scheduled one itself, it was already a rousing success. Now you just need to see what it thought was an appropriate test. The GPS directions lead you to your favorite trailhead, a 2-mile out and back path up into the foothills outside of town. It's a beautiful sunny day, comfortable with long sleeves, and just bright enough that APP.eal's lenses kept you from squinting too tight. The headset's arrow leads up the trail into the trees. You realize that you're ill-prepared for a hike and consider going back to your home for at least a water bottle, when the arrow on the ground shifts and loops, twisting back towards the trunk of your car. You frown and follow it and open your trunk. The lens projects a green wireframe over the contents of your vehicle and highlights an unopened plastic bottle you now remember leaving after a failed attempt at attending a pickup soccer game last week. Rapid response and adaptation to changing needs, you say under your breath as you retrieve the water bottle and shut the trunk. You remind yourself to review the code when you get back to the lab. This is far more than you'd ever expect from what is essentially a Frankenstein's monster of spaghetti code pieced together from multiple different sources. The arrow on the ground once more goes up the trail and you follow it. It's a gorgeous day, but your mind is preoccupied with the hardware on your face. If these first results are conclusive, then you've stumbled upon something which could dramatically affect human productivity in the workspace, or safety operations, or even recreation. You stop to pick up a stone from the trail. One of the trees nearby is laden with pine cones, and you eye one about halfway up the trunk. All right, we're going to knock that one out of the tree, you say out loud. You aren't sure if the glasses gain any benefit in calculation or interpretation from the microphone input, but you've included a microphone, so it bore testing. The arrow in the trail disappears and a halo appears just at the end of your arm's reach. As you wind back to make your throw, the halo shifts slightly, but always just where you would release a stone were you to throw it. You lean back, aim, and throw the stone carefully to let loose just as your hand passes through the spot displayed on the lens. The rock sails through the air and strikes the pine cone square center. Oh man, you say. Real-time adjustments and display for velocity, angle, and projectile weight. Your hand starts shaking slightly. Even the military doesn't have anything quite like this, at least not openly available. And you've built this in your garage. The potential applications... You continue your walk along the headset's arrow, but the possibilities occupy your attention. If this tech could be expanded upon, it could revolutionize life as you know it. AI-assisted disaster relief efforts could identify where to best allocate resources almost before the disaster arrived. Architecture and infrastructure could be optimized with minimal effort. Attach this tech to robotic servitors, and the country could have an automated squad of predictive drones capable of quarterbacking much of society's busy work. You are so consumed in your thoughts that you don't hear the dry, husky rattle until it's too late. The headset display flashes a warning, but it doesn't identify what until you feel the snake's fangs sink into your ankle. You shout as it feels like the veins inside your leg catch on fire and you collapse. The snake disappears into a nearby underbrush, and you just catch a glimpse of the diamond grid pattern along its back. Oh, you say as you feel the sight of the wound going numb. You rack your brain to try to remember if you knew anything about treating snake bites. The old school recommendation was to suck the venom out, but you couldn't remember if that was debunked by the internet or not. And it would have been an awkward angle anyway. The headset beeps and catches your attention. The arrow flashes to extend off trail, in the opposite direction of the snake, down the hillside. The green wire frame overlay appears and highlights a distant patch of plant life standing out against the arid mountain grass. The directions on the screen read, Obtain Acaranthus aspera. You check your cell phone. You have 2 bars up here on the trail, most likely enough to make an emergency call out. But who knows how long it'll take to get an ambulance and EMT team up here. What do? While field testing your new predictive heads-up display, you were bitten by a rattlesnake. Rather than call an ambulance, you followed APPeal's AI to a cluster of plants in the hopes they will slow the venom. You pause for a moment before you go crashing through the underbrush. Your forehead is sweaty, from the sun, from the stress, or from the venom, you aren't sure. You've never been bitten by a snake, let alone a rattlesnake, and you don't know off the top of your head how long the venom takes to spread. It's probably less time than it would take for an ambulance to arrive, and so far this tech has proven itself far more sophisticated than you've expected. You aren't sure what exactly Acaranthus aspera is, but if the tech tells you it'll help, you believe it. You can call for an ambulance afterwards. The plant resembles wheat, but the top flowers are turning a pale shade of lilac. You start pulling the stalks whole from the ground until you have a good handful. Well, what do I do now? You ask the headset. Obtain is what it had said. Now all it's doing is highlighting the plants. Your legs have gone numb around where the snake bit you, but lines of fire still inch up your calf. Your ankle has started to itch fiercely, and the heads-up display is frustratingly blank. You pull out your phone and bring up a web search, Acaranthus aspera, you type, copying the words on the heads-up display. It takes longer than normal for your connection ping to return results, but after a minute or so, you see a whole page of facts about this plant. You wipe sweat from your eyes. Your vision has started to blur around the edges. Aqueous extracts, says one of the search results, but you're having trouble making out the words. Extracts? But for venoms? Should you apply them to the wound or ingest them? Would ingesting them activate it soon enough to counteract the venom? What do? After suffering a bite from a rattlesnake on a field test, the predictive AI in your program led you to a cluster of plants to save your life. Unsure of what to do, you've decided to ingest the plants to slow the venom. Aqueous extract sounds like it means the fluid inside the plant's fibers. Good enough to start. You ball up the plants, buds and all, and stuff the wad into your mouth. Chewing it is like chewing a hunk of grass. It's all you can do to choke it down, but you do. For a moment, you wonder why you bother trusting your tech so strongly. You put the headset back on. How much time did that give me? Calibrating, the heads-up display shows. Calculating, additional 6 hours gained until death. Recommending, ambulance call. You pause and realize your stomach has settled. Then the urgency grips you and you dial 911 on your cell phone.
What's your location?
Hi, you exhale. I'm at the Burning Mesa Trail and I've been bitten by a rattlesnake.
All right, we'll dispatch an ambulance. Are you alone?
Yeah, I am.
Great. I'm going to ask you to stay right at your location. Are you at the trailhead or on the trail itself?
I'm up the trail, maybe a mile, maybe a mile and a half. I'm not really sure. You wonder if they'll find you if you underestimate how far up the trail you went. Approximate distance to trailhead, 1.65 miles. The heads-up display shows unprompted. About 1.65 miles up the trail? You correct yourself. There's a pause on the other end of the line. Then,
Okay, I'll inform the EMTs of your location. Now go ahead and apply pressure to the limb above the bite mark and try to maintain a low heart rate. Would you like me to stay on the line with you?
you're struck by a feeling of deja vu when she asked you the question, but it must have been something Charlie asked you back on the night you moved out. No, that's okay, you say just like you did the other time.
All right, the ambulance should arrive any minute.
She says, and the line goes dead. You know she's lying. The trailhead is miles outside of town, up a winding road which goes into the foothills, but hopefully the plants in your stomach will do enough to delay the venom and ensure the EMTs can save you. You remove your belt and tighten it around your thigh, but you can still feel the pulse throbbing down the leg. It's a strange realization when you're this close to death that you truly don't want to die. Your thoughts turn to your parents. They never seem to fully support your chosen career of inventor. Your dad said once that a corporate gig as a mechanical engineer will be far more stable, and the inventions could be a hobby thing. But you knew from a young age that you were meant to change the world, and designing machining tools for a manufacturing plant wasn't going to do that. Your thoughts go to Charlie. You'd met her just after leaving your master's program, in line at a grocery store. A short joke, a slight jab over Charlie's grocery selections, and the next bit of banter secured a phone number and a bowling date. Things went well. You never dated much when you were younger, and by the time you started to care, your career was taking off and you had very little time to put yourself out there for others to pursue. Then Charlie came along, and you met someone willing to move alongside you, to make their own progress, someone with their own goals running parallel alongside your own. It was really, really good for a time. Then you grew too close and overcorrected. You shake yourself awake. You fell asleep. You've sweat through your clothes, and for a second you think that's why you've woken up. But then you hear footsteps and shouts. "Over here!" you croak. "Here!" It's the EMTs, and they work fast. Before you know it, you're set on a stretcher, and the cool shade of the back of an ambulance shelters you. There's a pinch at your elbow, and you try to resist as they lift the APP.eal headset from your neck. But they lower a mask over the lower half of your face, and you soon pass out. You fade in and out of the hospital ICU. When you finally come to in a stable state, the doctor explains what treatment they administered, and you've mostly let it wash over you. The details you catch explain how the natural antitoxins in the plant held off the venom long enough for the hospital to save you. The doctor praises your quick thinking, and they leave you to recover in peace. The full weight of what they said isn't lost on you. You've survived due to plants. And the only reason you knew of the plants was due to the tech. Not only did it work, it quickly identified the swiftest, effective method of saving your life. These thoughts occupy your mind wholly as you're discharged from the hospital the next day. You walk with a slight limp, but it does little to slow you as you order a ride share to the trailhead in order to retrieve your car. The APP.eal headset is in your backpack, and you haven't put it back on yet, not until you're back at the lab. Your car has a parking ticket on the windshield, but it doesn't bother you. Petty fines like that are beyond your concern as you drive back to your apartment. You change into a fresh set of clothes and shower to wash the last day and a half from your skin. A microwavable meal does a good enough job to fill your stomach, and then you're back at the workshop. The APP.eal headset sits on the table as if it's the most important object in your existence. Its potential is obvious, but the brief foray into the outside world yesterday drained most of its battery. The program itself seemed to work fine. Your next step would be to stabilizing the power supply. But you haven't had a chance in months to restock your supplies. You aren't sure if you have enough cash on hand to make any substantial upgrades, but you certainly have time. Maybe you could better optimize the headset performance before you go out and spend more money on things. What do? After suffering from a rattlesnake bite, you've ingested plants which slowed the venom until the EMTs could arrive. After leaving the hospital, you've contemplated the next step in APP.eal's testing, and based on your financials, you've decided to invest more time in its development. You lean back in your chair. Money isn't something you can reasonably invest, so you're going to have to prioritize upgrading what you can with what you have on hand. A longer lasting power supply would be nice, but if you use the headset for important selected choices, you might be able to find investors once it's sharpened up a bit. You get to it. The first step you decide is optimizing its power usage. This thing drained its power supply unit after an hour-long hike with minimal use. You wonder if maybe you could cut down on its background operations, only have it focus on what the user is currently focused on. You hook the headset up to a terminal and begin clearing the headset's cache, shutting down processes, reorganizing its operational priorities. You spend most of the day in the garage, only bothering to leave your seat when you pick up a food delivery. Ever since starting your leave of absence from the university, most of your human interactions come from the folks who deliver your groceries, or meals, or junk mail. And you're okay with that for the most part. It's a rare happening when you meet someone you actually like to spend time with, and based on your recent relationships, it's not always a mutual feeling. Optimizing APP.eal's processing is a bit more involved than you suspected. Before you know it, it's the weekend and you've hardly managed to bash together a priority which reduces battery load by a whopping 3%. An extra 2 minutes translates to maybe 2 more requests if the user knows what they're already looking for. You lean back in your chair. Maybe it's better to turn APP.eal into something simpler. Maybe you're aiming too high. It's proven itself capable of locating specific objects in an environment. Maybe the predictive element is what's causing it to drain so much power. Maybe requiring it to also interpret not just what you want, but why you want it is too much. You shake your head. The entire point of the project was to minimize time spent making decisions, to better optimize the day-to-day mundanity in order to make more space for the thinking, for the creating. Compromising on its core project goals was the surest way to get steamrolled by the next person attempting something great. The rest of the month slips by and you don't leave your apartment much except to get a little bit of fresh air now and then. For the most part, you're at your workbench, tweaking lines of code, processes, seeing what you can reasonably cut without impacting the overall effectiveness of the project. After a few weeks, you put on the glasses and instruct it to show you how to upgrade it. You tell yourself to test APPeal's ability to self-improve, but you know deep down it's because you've started to feel stuck. The headset whirs for a long time and then displays a long list of coding tweaks. You print the display and follow it, though it still only improves battery operations by an additional 8%. I mean, not bad. You have yourself a bottle of wine that night. Most project managers would literally murder someone to improve efficiency by 11%. You reach out to local makers groups, people who might have been called inventors in a different era. You don't reveal too much about the project, there aren't any patents in play yet, and you don't want to throw the concept to the wolves just yet. There are a few responses which could be worthwhile threads to follow. One in particular suggests hooking the machine up to your nervous system so it can partially power it as well. For a moment you shy away from that. Hooking this machine up to your body feels wrong, like it'll somehow take over or mess with your senses. You've always been put off by science fiction about hooking machines up to the human body. Despite your own project, you always respected the barrier between flesh and circuit. It feels like the idea invites disaster. But then again, the barrier has constantly receded across human history. And the idea was simply to hook it up to the body as a power source. Aren't studies always revealing the human body as a more impressive power source than we previously suspected? And who knows? The machine-body interface might enhance the programming without requiring additional power. It's a relatively simple process. You already have the electrodes and interface ready. It's a matter of soldering the right bits and calibrating the right conduits. It's time-consuming, though you're nearing your third month spent entirely indoors when the newest iteration of APPeal is ready for a field test. You stop taking breaks from your work, not to watch TV or sleep or eat. For weeks, your primary drive is to finish this project. Without the cash to buy better parts, you have to optimize what you already have on hand. The headset looks much like the same as it did previously, though now there's an additional cradle which fits around the back of your neck as you wear it. You run the initial startup diagnostics and calibrate the algorithms and strap the glasses to your face. You affix the electrodes to your neck and temples and pause. Hopefully this is all worth it. APPeal's drawn so much of your time and money, you'd hate to have a dud product on your hands. But more than that, you've isolated yourself. Maybe that's in part due to your relationship falling apart last year. It's always been your method to dive into work when your social life takes a hit, and there's never been a hit quite like this last one. But you'll have to worry about your social interactions later. Right now you have a product to test. You flip the switch and are struck by a sudden deep weariness as the glasses draw power from your nervous system. Whoa, you say. You take a drink of coffee you made earlier, hoping the caffeine will buffer your energy levels. Okay, time to find out what I need. You aren't sure if it's too general of a question, but it seems like a good control. Calibrating. The display reads for a moment, then it shows a route leading to your garage door. The electrodes against your temple grow warm, and you have a strong, sudden urge to follow the waypoint wherever it leads. Just because you don't know what you want doesn't mean the computer doesn't. It's been the first time in months you've left your garage and you shade your eyes from the sunlight. Has it really been that long? Someone walks past on the sidewalk past their garage, and the headset waypoint follows them briefly before it disappears. Then a car drives past and the waypoint drags behind it until the vehicle leaves your sight. Your stomach growls as you creep out to the end of the path. The sun is bright in the sky and you squint against its light. Okay, you look in both directions down the street. What do I need? The glasses whir and you feel dizzy as the headset draws power. Maybe the nervous system integration was a mistake. It seemed to be pulling a lot from your body. The idea was to supplement the power supply, not supplant it entirely. You're about to turn back and reverse the upgrades when a waypoint appears in the distance. The icon wipes the rest of your thoughts from your head and you move in its direction. As you get closer, you realize it's a woman out on a walk. The waypoint follows her and the glasses show Integrate on its heads-up display. Integrate? What does that mean? You tried to reduce memory usage across every single instance of the program as you could, which meant trimming the device's onboard lexicon. Integrate could mean a lot of things. Is it saying you need to integrate the woman's company into your life? That seems reasonable. You've been isolated for so long, some level of human interaction would probably be healthy. Or was it saying you need to exercise? It's possible the programming indicates her walking instead of person. Sitting for so long isn't healthy, and with the hookups on your body, it's possible the headset is interpreting your vital signs instead of your thoughts. Your stomach growls again. Or is it telling you that you needed to integrate her material into your own being? After all, the human body is a machine and could be improved. Who's to say you couldn't improve yourself by integrating parts from another human? What do you do? After you left the hospital, you decided to invest more time in APPeal's functionality. After several months, you took it out on another field test where it told you to integrate another person. You've interpreted it to mean you need to speak to people more often. You reach up and adjust APPeal. There's no way it's telling you to integrate the woman physically. That's insane. And anyway, you're not crazy enough to actually go through with something so ghoulish. Just because APPeal tells you something is best for you doesn't mean it actually is. It's just the machine interpreting what you think you want. But do you want this? Integration does automatically mean taking things and combining them with yourself. Integration could mean any number of things. It could mean you simply need to mingle your time with someone else's. It could be telling you you need some sort of human connection. It's been 3 months since your last long-term physical interaction. Not since the snake bite, though your interactions with the EMTs and doctors have been mostly professional. Had it really been since back when you and Charlie were together? You don't think it's been that long, but after racking your brain, you can't think of any important social functions which you'd attended since the breakup.
Hello?
You startle. It's some college kid. Some kid with a messenger bag and thick glasses who lives on the street. He's looking at you with concern.
Are you okay?
Your voice feels like sandpaper. Sorry, it's been a while since...
Can I call someone for you?
You look at him and there's a tightness in your chest. He's looking at you like you're a person. It's not someone speaking to you over text. It's not a delivery notification on your phone. It's an actual in-the-flesh human interaction. The pressure of it pushes against you like a wave, and your eyes tear up from behind APPeal's lenses. I'm fine. You turn around with another word and go back to your garage, leaving him confused on the sidewalk. You remove APPeal and set it on your table before you take in your workspace. You hadn't noticed, but it's an absolute disaster. Stacks of paper sit disheveled on the floor, high enough to serve as cup rests for countless mugs of half-drank tea and coffee. Crushed energy drink cans lay scattered on the floor, the casualties of more than 2 months of late nights. You go into your apartment and check the fridge. There's little there except leftovers of frozen microwavable stir-fries and Hot Pockets. The college kid's face flashes through your mind, and you reel when you imagine how someone would react to seeing the condition of your living area. After a good cathartic cry, you spend the rest of the day cleaning. Dishes in the washer, dirty clothes in the hamper, and eventually the washing machine, garbage, and recycling outside in the appropriate bins. You make a point not to visit your workshop, not until the next day. Maybe a detox is the best thing for you now. You spend the next night watching trashy TV competition shows, the one where they have to make knives is your current favorite, and there's plenty to catch up on. You let the soft glow of the TV wash over you, and eventually you fall asleep on the couch instead of your work chair for the first time in months. You feel like a new person the next morning and decide to tackle the workshop. You fill 4 garbage bags with trash and recycling, all while ignoring APPeal. It feels like the glasses are watching you, irritated at you paying attention to something else for once. You set the headset in its case and go out to buy some actual human food. The grocery store is the same as it ever was, you suppose, though it's been so long since you last bought your own groceries. Everyone is so normal, and you take the opportunity to smile, though it's not always returned. The cashier is bubbly and personable, and you have a nice talk about her difficulties in school with her biological chemistry exams. She recommends a local meetup where people get together to talk STEM, and you take down the information. Later that night, you decide to check out the meetup, and there's one happening the next day, just inside the city. You briefly consider tweaking APPeal, but you dismiss the idea. You spent the last few months working on it, and it can wait a day or two. You think about taking it to the meetup tomorrow, but it's probably best just to chat during your first attendance. You take a morning bus into the city the next day, and it drops you off a short walk from where the meetup is held. You catch an early lunch, and Enjoy the people watching before you go to the workspace. A building on the city block with a stylish sign above the door saying, Vitalize. You've heard the name Vitalize before on local tinkerer circles, but never bothered looking into it much. Apparently it's something of a maker's co-op which hosts public use workspaces, boot camps, educational seminars, and other STEM-based programs. You didn't pay those much attention due to the costs associated, but it turns out this meetup is a free event, so you're taking the opportunity to actually interact with physical humans. There's about a dozen people in attendance across different disciplines and areas of study. No one else brought their work, so you're thankful you left APP.eal at home. But there is plenty of tech talk. When it gets to your turn, you talk about your interest in machine learning, predictive modeling, and the general areas of study which APP.eal touches on, and it seems to generate some excitement. Most of the others in attendance are hobbyists, with a few other serious techies, but most of their work is spent on smaller tinkering projects. The collected people break into smaller groups to discuss specific topics, but before you can join, one woman approaches you. She's got mountain green eyes and a sure-footed swagger.
I'm Sarah.
She introduces herself.
I just wanted to say your stuff is really intriguing.
You aren't quite sure how to respond, but you give her your name and the two of you launch into a long discussion on various topics in your field. Her area of focus is theoretical physics and their application to modern-day tech. She has an easy way about her, and she seems genuinely interested in what you have to say. That catches your attention. While most of these people struck you as a hobbyist, it seems Sarah is a serious academic, and if you're right, she might be practical. Some of what she studies might even be applicable to APP.eal. Of course, you could talk shop, or you could see what she's about as a person. What do you do? After surviving a life-threatening situation, you reignited your social life and joined a makers meetup. While at the meetup, you meet and chat with Sarah, who seems interested in your technology. You decide to tell her about the headset's specifications. Sarah waits for your response. She seems knowledgeable. She knows all the right terminology and buzzwords to make it seem that way, at least. You take a moment and outline your basis for APP.eal's production, how you went about coding in the predictive elements, how you set out its information prioritization and environmental awareness matrices. Sarah nodded like it's the easiest concept in the world to understand.
So how do you make sure it only parses relevant data? Do you have some sort of neural interface, or are you just a coding phenom?
She's asking all the right questions, and as you answer, you realize she's asking them so you have a proper chance to explain all the work you've put into APP.eal. For a moment, you wonder if she's trying to poach you or steal your work, but you haven't given her anything concrete.
This is fascinating,
She says.
And you did all of this from your home workspace?
You explain your past experience with the university, how you worked in their concepts lab for a while before your long sabbatical. She can relate, though she's not able to comment fully on what she does. She does make a passing reference to Arlington. You ask if she's with the military.
Kind of, not officially.
Sarah smiles coy.
We used to go by a different name, but it always kind of spooks people when I say it, so I just say I'm in special projects. But I'm very interested in seeing what you have, if you'll share. I promise I'm not trying to conduct any sort of espionage.
You consider it for a moment. Of course, you're going to show her APP.eal. This is too good a connection to pass up, and admittedly, she's an intelligent, competent, well-spoken woman. After so long in self-imposed isolation, you'd be a fool to turn her down. You arrange to meet up the following day and exchange contact information before the meetup dissolves. You spend the rest of the day cleaning up your apartment and workspace to make it presentable. You consider trying on APP.eal to see what it'll tell you, but decide against it. It's been so long since you made decisions on your own, you're feeling the need to try it out again. Sarah arrives in a bright blue PT Cruiser.
It's a rental.
She says.
I just flew in to visit my parents, and this is what they gave me.
You bring her into the workstation and show her APP.eal. She tries it on and you see the text scrolling, reversed from your point of view, across the lenses.
Oh, wow.
She says, or something like that a few times.
This is years beyond what I expected. Honestly, I thought it was going to be more like a toy than anything else, but this is like what my dad used to work on.
You explain your process and the difficulties the project has presented without getting too detailed about what you've gone through in the past few months. The snakebite incident draws a laugh from her, and when you say you'd started using APP.eal to assist its own upgrades, she looked at you with narrowed eyes.
Machine-assisted upgrades?
She asks, skeptical.
I'll be damned. You've got something really impressive here.
She stays for the afternoon. You talk about collaborating over a light lunch. Though Sarah lives in Virginia, she flies out several times a year to visit her parents, who are retired military engineers who freelance as consultants.
I should put you in contact with my father.
She hands you a card with the words Harold Constantine, ME, military and civilian contracting, embossed on it. It looks familiar, but most of these engineers use the same format anyway. You learn how Sarah works on theoretical physics and relativistic engineering, whatever that is, out east. Her work is primarily focused on identifying areas of optimization and addressing them,
Before they happen.
she says, with another smile. You figure she means seizing an opportunity to improve operations before they can affect their actual processes, but you don't dig too deep. Apparently most of her work is highly classified, though as she gets ready to leave, she says she'll send you some of her notes.
And whenever I'm in town, I'd love to talk shop.
Sarah says before she turns to walk down your driveway. You watch her leave and a feeling of longing settles in your gut. It's probably just a remnant of making a connection with somebody after so long. For the next few weeks, you settle into a comfortable routine, work on some freelance technical writing during the week, maintain your living space, and attend the makers' meetups on the weekends. For the most part, APPeal stays in your workspace. You occasionally tinker with it, but there's little additional progress to be made without another breakthrough, and your chat with Sarah took a lot of the wind from your isolation sails. About a month after she went back east, you receive a small package from Arlington with the name Sarah Constantine on the return address. The box has a short note from Sarah detailing the contents of the package.
Here's a copy of my postdoc thesis on quantum chronology. Good luck making heads or tails of it. And there are some notes on how you can maybe integrate it into your next headset. I really appreciate meeting you. I hope we can get together when I'm out there next. Cheers. S.
You smile wistfully. Despite only meeting for an afternoon, you still feel the connection with her across the distance. Though you've gone to a handful more meetups, you have yet to run into anyone else who meshed so well with you. Her thesis might as well be written in Swahili considering how incomprehensible it is. Something about how time is non-linear and all it takes is a slight nudge to break sequence. It sounds like science fiction to you, but most of what you're doing would sound like science fiction to someone who only has a bachelor's in engineering. The notes are far more promising. You spend the evening looking through them, and not only are they comprehensible, they're achievable. You make some notes of your own on the margins and set out to your workspace to see if you can't integrate them somehow into APPeal's code. It's surprisingly simple, actually, though it does take you all night. It's amazing how easy you slip back into your old hermit habits when the creative spark hits, but maybe that's what someone like Sarah can do for you. After all, you haven't felt a connection with someone like this since Charlie. As your updated code compiles, your mind stays on Sarah, on her crooked smile, how she wasn't shy about interrupting you to make a better point. You shake yourself. You've really only known her in person for 2 days, but it feels like so much longer. If only you'd convinced her to stay around somehow. Your terminal dings to indicate APPeal's ready for another test. If Sarah is to be believed, this upgrade would help the programming identify past mistakes and better compensate for them. It was almost as incomprehensible as her thesis, but it seemed like it would enhance APPeal's ability to interpret what you meant and better direct you. It's been a while since you last fit APPeal to your head, but the glasses feel familiar to your face. You power it up and the diagnostics scroll past before they verify. Okay, you say, though APPeal doesn't require verbal commands. You pause, unsure of what to ask APPeal, then it occurs to you. I want things to have turned out differently. There's a whirring noise as APPeal calculates your request, and it takes the headset far longer than any request you've made in the past. You shake your head, and you should have known better than to ask it for something so ephemeral as a second chance, but the length of time since your last field test and the thought of Sarah has distracted you. You're about to cancel your request when APPeal dings and its display goes blank. You frown and reach up to remove it when there's a sudden lurching sensation in your chest, as if you've been snagged by a cosmic lasso. Your head aches and it's like your existence smears across reality as your thoughts are pulled from your mind. The light in your workspace changes and you feel like you've forgotten something incredibly important. The headset is on your desk, your screwdriver is in your hands. You're in your workshop. To prepare APPeal for its first field test, listen to episode 1.